So the short video that we're going to start with is about exponents and what they actually apply to. So for example, we see a lot of problems that are similar, like -3 squared versus the quantity -3 squared, and just a bunch of different examples. And the way that they're written makes a difference on what their answer is and how we write them. So we're going to quickly go over some confusion about what the exponent actually applies to. And our targets that this helps us apply to in class would be expanding exponents using repeated multiplication, and this will help us apply properties of exponents to rewrite and simplify. So here's a funny little picture to help you remember. I think of exponents just like a T-Rex. So I made up this silly little animal called the T-Rexponent. Because when I think of a T-Rex, I know that a T-Rex has these short little teeny arms. So if I drew this picture up here, this T-Rex right here wants to grab onto something. So there's a red triangle, and then there is a blue square. But because it has teeny arms, right, its arms can only reach that red triangle. If it wanted to reach a little bit more than that red triangle, it would need help, right? Maybe that means longer arms. Maybe it means a tool to put in his arms, but it can't reach the blue square. Now that is just how exponents work. So on some of these examples, you might see me draw little arms on the exponents because exponents have a short reach. Exponents, just like that T-Rexponent, can only quote unquote reach the thing that they're directly next to. So for example, if I look up here, here's the exponent of 2. This 2 has teeny little arms, so this 2 can only reach the thing that it's directly next to. So these little arms here are going to grab on to the x. So here I would know that I have an x written twice. An example that gets a little bit harder is like an example over here. What I see is here's the exponent. Now the question is it, what picture is it? Is it this picture? Is it 3x being multiplied by itself twice? Or is it 3 times the x being multiplied by itself twice? So what we can do is we can think about the little arms on the exponent. This little exponent only has teeny little arms, so it can only grab the thing it's directly next to. So here what they're telling us is it's going to be this picture then, because the exponent only applies to the x in this case, not the 3. So if that exponent wanted to apply to more than one thing, it would need extra help, just like that T-Rexponent would need extra help. But the tool here is parentheses. So let's look at the difference between these examples. If I again did this one, 3x squared, versus parentheses 3x squared. So in this case here, the exponent of 2 has teeny little arms, so the thing it's directly next to is the x. So this x is what's getting the exponent. So if I had to expand this, the 3 is just there as the number 3. But then exponents mean repeated multiplication, so I know that I would put x in those boxes. If I look at this example over here, the 2, again, only has teeny little arms, but now since it has the helper of the parentheses, it can grab onto the parentheses. So the entire thing is being applied to the exponent as the base, because again, the arms are grabbing the parentheses. It's directly next to a parentheses. So the way I would expand this is there's just 2 boxes, and both of those boxes are filled with 3x. Now that seemingly little skill makes a big difference. So here are a couple examples of different ways that you're going to see how that skill, what does the exponent apply to, would make a big difference. So let's look at our first example up here. If we can properly determine what the exponent applies to, we're going to get very different numbers if we do it correctly versus incorrectly. So here on the first example, I look at this little exponent of 0. That little exponent has teeny little arms, and it can only grab the thing it's directly next to. It is directly next to the number 5, not the negative. It can't reach the negative. Versus this other example. Over here, this little teeny exponent of 0 has teeny little arms, but because it has parentheses there to help, it can actually grab onto everything because it's grabbing on the parentheses. So what's in the parentheses? Everything. So if we tried to expand this, we'd get much different answers. Like over here, I just have that negative sign. Okay, so I took this negative sign and just carried it down because that's just in front of the problem. Now, when I see this number, 5 to the 0 power, that's just the number 1. So negative 1 over 1 is equal to negative 1. Now over here, this entire thing is getting the exponent. So what is negative 5 to the 0 power? Well, that's just positive 1, and 1 over 1 is equal to 1. So we have to keep track of what the exponent applies to, because we can see sometimes it gives us different numbers as our answer. Negative 1 and positive 1 are a lot different. So one reason that we have to watch out for this is we get different numbers. Looking at the next example, we've been learning about negative exponents and how they move the location of the base. So if I look at these two examples, the idea is that I do see a negative exponent. The exponent is negative 3 in both of those problems. Now, I know that when I see a negative exponent, here I'm going to write in black, and I've run out of a little room, so I'm just going to write it down here. But what I know here is when I have a negative exponent, something's going to move. So the 5 was already on the bottom. Now, the question here is what moves, the 4, the x, or both of them? So in this situation, I can see that that little exponent, if I expand its little arms, can only grab onto the x, which means only the x is going to move. So this 4 will stay on top because it doesn't have a negative exponent. Only the x does. So those x's then are going to move because the exponent is only applying to the x and not the 4. Now if we look at the other example here, what we can see is that this little exponent has helpers now. Its little arms grab onto the parentheses. So everything in the parentheses is getting that negative exponent, which means everything is going to move. So the 5 was already on the bottom, but now since everything is getting the exponent, everything is going to move. And if I removed everything on top, of course, I replace it with the 1. The last example is pretty classic. If I had to expand these, like what would it look like here? So I'm going to go ahead and remove these boxes just for a second to make myself some more room. So if we look at the first example, negative 2 to the 4th power, and then this one on the right here, I would say is the quantity, negative 2 to the 4th power. Well, here what we're saying is this little exponent has teeny arms, so it can only grab onto the thing that's next to it. It can only reach the 2. As much as it wants to take the negative, it can't reach it. So I have 4 boxes to write because the exponent was 4. And because that exponent is only latching onto the 2, I fill those boxes with the number 2. And then since that negative wasn't part of the exponent, that negative is just going to go in front of the boxes. So I like to think of this as the opposite of 2 to the 4th power, right? So this 2 to the 4th power is right here, right? We have 2 multiplied by itself 4 times. And then the word opposite, we know, is the negative. Now over here, the way I like to interpret this one, here I'm taking the opposite of 2, and then I want to multiply times itself 4 times. So we see the difference here is that that little exponent has help with the parentheses. It can only reach the parenthesis. So that means everything in the parenthesis is going to go in my boxes. So I'm going to put negative 2 in each of those boxes. So this number, this is 4 times 4, this number is 16, whereas over here, this would be the opposite of 16, which is negative 16. So after this, at this point, you are ready to go do the assignment that's associated with this video. So here's the first page that I want you to do, and there'll be a separate video with the answer key or document with the answer. And then this is the other set of exercises that I want you to do with this video. And again, there'll either be a separate post with a video doing this, explaining the answers, or there will be a document with the answers on it.